What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today, after a bit of a delay, we are finishing up our talk on the Gunslinger fighter, and I'm excited to finally be able to bring you this video. I recorded this several times and ran into a lot of technical issues, and so now finally we have a video for you, and I hope you guys are excited for this build. Also, Merry Christmas. I want to make sure that that I say that to all of you. I hope you have a great Christmas season, great New Year, all that good stuff. Before we jump into our build today, though, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch the channel are not subscribed, so please don't be one of those people. Help us to reach our goal of an undetermined amount of subscribers for next year. We met our 2,000 goal this year, so that's very good, and I'm hoping to go ahead and get a jump start on whatever goal I think about for next year. That will be coming very soon. And of course, make sure you share the video with your friends and click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. So if you remember from all the way back last week when we started talking about the Gunslinger, if you've forgotten or not seen that video, it'll be up in the iCard above right there for our ranking. We talked about how this subclass is okay, right? It's not anything that will blow your mind. And technically, if you're wanting a gunslinger type of build, you're probably better off just going Battlemaster most of the time. But I wanted to make this subclass work, and I think that we've come up with a pretty cool solution. And we've gotten around some of the complications that come with some of these guns. And yeah, so we can make use of some of the better guns that are on this list that are not part of your standard list of firearms, and with that we can technically outpace a lot of other gun wielding builds because we have access to those guns. Now obviously you could homebrew and allow those special guns like the Bad News or the Blunderbuss, things like that. You could allow those, of course, in your game as well, just as a gun that can be obtained normally. In that case, you know, that doesn't really apply, but we're assuming that these rules apply only to this subclass, and so we can do some pretty cool stuff with it. What we can do with it, let's find out right now. We start off, as always, with our race, and I wanted to do something besides custom lineage and variant human. I did that 2 weeks in a row, and I'm good. I don't need to do that again this week. You know, it's Christmas. Let's change things up a little bit. Let's give you something new and exciting, right? So I wanted to go something different. Now, I did a poll on the channel last week because that's when I was planning to put this video up originally, and I kind of was sussing out how your tables, at least of the people who answered the poll, feel about allowing races that are not just from the PHB, right? Or specifically from like Bolos and things like that. And I had a surprising majority of people who said pretty much anything goes as long as it's officially released. And so I felt pretty good about going with a race that is from Spelljammer. So if this race is not allowed at your table, by all means, wait around till the very end. We will be talking about the honorable mentions, and I'll have some alternatives for you there. So don't worry, you've got some options there as well. It'll just change up how a few of the levels end up going, but we'll talk about it at the end. For this build, though, we're going to go with the GIF or GIF, whichever one you want to pronounce it as. Let me know in the comments down below which one it is pronounced as. Anyway, the Hippo people are a really, really cool race who happen to really like guns. And so it kind of fit really well with this. Of course, this build started off as a custom lineage with the gunner feat, but honestly, I think that this is going to give us a lot more bang for our buck, and it's just cooler. Right? It's just cooler to be a hippo person rather than just a dude. So I like this a lot better. We of course get a few key things like Astral Spark, which lets us deal a little bit of extra force damage a few times per day, which is nice. Firearm Mastery, which goes ahead and gives us proficiency in firearms. Normally as a fighter, we would have to wait until level 3 to get proficiency in firearms. So this gives us that right away. So that way you can justify it being part of your starting equipment, which is good. We also get Hippo Build, which allows you to drag and carry and push things that are really heavy, which is cool, even though we're kind of dumping strength. So you may run into that being useful for you. As for our stats, we are of course going with our modified standard array as always. Of course, if you do point by regular standard array or rolled stats, your stats are going to look different than mine, and you'll just have to adjust those accordingly. Of course, you are just going to need to focus on the top 3 really on this one. Technically the top 4, because this one is a little bit mad because we're doing some interesting multi-classing on this build, but we'll talk about that here in just a second. As far as those stats go, we're going to put our 17 in dexterity, our 15 in wisdom, our 13 in intelligence, our 12 constitution, our 10 in strength, and our 8 in charisma. We don't need strength or charisma. You can do whatever you want with those. Constitution is technically our dump stat here. It falls into that course, which is bad. I don't like doing that, but we do need dexterity, wisdom, and intelligence in order to make this somewhat decent. So that's kind of where we're going here. And of course, this race gives us a +1 in 3 different stats. And of course, we're going to put those in our 3 odd stats, giving us an 18, 16, and 14 respectively. As for equipment, I would grab some studded leather armor. That's going to be the best for you since your dex is going to be so good. And then as far as your weapon goes, for now, I would either grab a musket or a shield and a pistol. This is, of course, assuming you can afford it, because these are very, very expensive, and that will be up to you and your DM as to what you can and cannot afford. If you're doing gold buy, you're going to be stretching it. But yeah, just get with the best that you can. If you can't afford any of that, then just get a crossbow, like a heavy crossbow, and just kind of go with it until you can afford the gun. But that's okay. I understand it's very expensive to have a musket or a pistol. Just whenever you can afford it, we will get there. If you do go with the pistol and shield option, you are not going to be using the shield right now. You will have to keep that on your back because you will need a free hand in order to reload your pistol, but in a few levels you will not. And so we'll get to that in just a minute. Let's go ahead and start taking some levels now. As far as our starting level goes, I have started fighter in every build that I have done up to this point in the fighter series. However, I'm going to mix things up today and go with a different starting class. And the reason is because what we get from this other class is so essential to us just being able to function. I can't put it off at all. And so I'm going to have to put off my fighter levels by just a little bit in order to get ourselves set up. And we're going to be starting off, to probably no one's surprise, with Artificer. Now, the Artificer gives us some really, really cool stuff, especially at level 2, but here at level 1, we get magical tinkering, which allows us to make little doodads that make sounds and smells and shapes and things like that. It's a nice little ribbon feature. It's pretty cool. And then we also get spell casting, which is great. I would take mending over anything as far as your cantrips go. To me, a broken firearm could be fixed with mending. That may be a discussion to have with your DM, but to me, if that's not the case, then what's the point of the mending cantrip at all, right? If something breaks, mending fixes it as long as all the parts are there. So yeah, your gun jams up, you mend it, and you're good, right? So to me, I think that makes sense, and that way you can do that. As far as any other cantrips you take, really up to you. I don't really have a ton of preferences. Your intelligence is not going to be good throughout the entirety of this build, so don't pick anything that requires a saving throw or an attack roll, because you're going to be very disappointed in your accuracy and the chances of it landing on an opponent. As far as first level spells, I would take Absorb Elements, and then maybe Detect Magic, maybe Cure Wounds. I mean, Cure Wounds is nice for getting someone up from 0. Don't expect yourself to be healing for a ton just because your intelligence is low, but it's something, right? And so we'll take it. It's all good. At Artificer 2, though, is where we actually start to kick off things, and hopefully you've gotten a gun by now. If not, of course, you can apply this same thing to your crossbow, and then once you get a gun, you can apply this to that. But we're going to take Infuse Item, because that's our big feature here at level 2. For our infusions, our top one is going to be the Repeating Shot, and some of you probably saw this coming, but it's just so good that I can't ignore it. Repeating Shot allows you to not have to reload your weapon as long as it has the ammunition property. Well, crossbows and guns both have that property, and so this basically means that every time you pull the trigger, there's going to be a bullet there, which is really, really, really cool. So it just has to do with how many attacks you can make, and you can just keep pulling the trigger because there's no loading at all. So this gets rid of any reload score that's on any of the fancy guns. This gets rid of that having to use an action or an attack in order to reload. It frees all of that up for you and takes these guns from abysmally terrible to kind of OP, and it only took 2 levels, so that is more than worth it to me. So other infusions that I would take, enhanced defense is always a good one, so you can just put that on your armor so you get a +1 to your AC. Homunculus Servant is one to consider if you want it to take the help action, but of course it risks being destroyed because it doesn't have flyby, even though it can have a flying speed, so just be careful with that. And then of course a bag of holding is not bad either. There's not a ton of features here that I really want. Just repeating shot is essential, and after that it's kind of whatever you want. So after that, though, we are now ready to take fighter levels, and I'm not saying we won't be back to Artificer, because wink wink nudge nudge, we might be back in just a little bit, but it's more important that I go ahead and get started on my fighter levels now so that I can go ahead and establish that identity as a gunslinger. And so we want to go ahead and get started on that as soon as possible. At Fighter 1, we of course are going to get a fighting style, and again, surprising no one, we are going to take the archery fighting style. This is one of the best, if not the best, fighting styles that's out there, and you being a ranged character, it's essential. So this is going to give you a +2 to any attack roll that you make with a ranged weapon. This is if you had a crossbow, this is if you have a gun. Anything like that is going to apply, which is going to be really, really nice as far as landing your shots on things that are higher AC. And we're going to need that help here in just a minute when we take a particular feat. Again, no surprises there. We also get Second Wind, which is a nice little bonus action heal. It's not going to scale on this build as well as some of our other builds that we've done in Fighter, because we are taking significantly less fighter levels on this build. We'll get to that in a little bit. But it's okay, right? It's a nice little heal every now and then if you really need it, but it's not going to save you from a big hit, really. At Fighter 2, we get Action Surge, and so this is going to allow us to attack twice or just take 2 actions in general, which is really, really good. It is the main reason why people take Fighter, really, and we can't turn that down. It's really nice. At Fighter 3, we get, of course, our subclass, and we get Firearm Proficiency, which we already had because of our race. We get Gunsmith, which just allows us to repair our guns, and it gives us the Tinker's tools and all of that good stuff. But if we have Mending, this kind of goes out the window. So we're not going to have to spend a bunch of gold in order to fix our gun. Just cast Mending on it and you're done. So again, we're saving a ton of money by not having to spend money to fix your guns, and you're not having to buy bullets. Bullets are kind of hard to come by, so you're going to have to craft your own if you don't have any. This is going to save you so much money. And so the only thing that you're ever going to want to buy as far as bullets is if maybe there's an explosive bullet or it's a +2 or better bullet. Otherwise, you don't need it because all of your bullets are considered +1s right now. So I don't care about anything else. So this is going to last you a long time, which is going to be really, really good. You also get Adept Marksman, which gives us, of course, our trick shots. This is where things get really, really fun. There are 2 shots that I would take for now, and then of course we will get some more later. What I would take right now is Deadeye Shot, which of course allows you to give yourself advantage on an attack. And I would also take Violent Shot now, which allows you to raise that level of its chance to blow up. But you also get to deal more damage if you hit. And so to me, that's worth it, especially if we can find a way to give ourselves reliable advantage later. And we might be able to do that here in just a little bit. So don't worry about that. I think that's more than worth it to take it. And every now and then, even if you don't have advantage, take that shot. It's just fun, right? And the worst case scenario, you just fix it with Mending and you're good. At Fighter 4, we are going to get our first ASI or feat, and I'm going to take Sharpshooter. I mean, what else am I going to take here? Yes, we have part of this feat from our racial, but the rest of it we don't have. And so as long as I have that -5 +10, it's worth it for me to take this feat in order to get that huge bump in damage. I gotta go for it. It's all good. At Fighter 5, we finally get extra attack. It's level 7, but you know, better late than never. And you know, I would honestly rather take those 2 levels so that I'm not having to spend one of these attacks in order to reload. I actually get a true extra attack. That's way better in my opinion, so I'm cool with this. At Fighter 6, we of course get another ASI or feat, which is great. I'm just going to go ahead and bump dexterity at this point. I really don't need any more feats on this build. I got enough from my racial and I got enough from the artificer levels that I really don't need any more feats, which is great. I of course have a few that I will mention at the very end, but I mean, I'm cool with not taking any more. So from now on, bump your stats. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bump dexterity here. Of course, that is going to bump us up to a 20, which feels really, really good. At Fighter 7, we get quick draw, which allows you to, of course, draw weapons and stow them in the same turn, which can be nice if you have like a bunch of pistols on you. But I mean, it is what it is. You could also just drop one for free if you wanted to and draw. So you know, it's just making sure that you don't have to drop your guns on the ground and somebody potentially takes it. But I mean, it's fine. It is what it is. I'm cool with it. We also get another shot here as well, which is really good. And of course, I would take either disarming or winging shot. Disarming, of course, will knock things out of people's hands. Very handy and can end a combat before it even begins, really. If you've got the big evil lich that's holding a staff of power and you can knock the staff of power out of its hand, that's going to be a problem. And it doesn't just knock it to the ground right next to it, it knocks it away from the target. So then your barbarian or your fighter or something can go and grab it without risking getting in melee. That's pretty awesome. And so of course with that as well, you know, you've got something big that has like a huge club that it's whacking everybody with, you can knock that out of its hand. So to me, that's pretty cool. We also could take winging shot, which of course will knock people prone. Now, you do not want to do this if you are trying to combo into yourself, because then you'll give yourself disadvantage if you knock something prone. But if you do this on your last shot of your turn and knock something prone right next to your barbarian or your melee fighter or melee whatever, yeah, that creature is going to be in for a really bad time because you just gave your friend advantage. So there are some really, really good upsides to both of these shots. And just spoiler alert, we're going to have time to take both of them on this build. So just grab one of them for now and we will get the other one here in a few levels. So don't worry, it's all good. So next would be Fighter 8. And I'm looking at my build here and I'm thinking, how can I make myself better, right? I don't need my bonus action for hardly anything right now. My bonus action is really completely free. If we're being honest, I have my second wind and that's it. So what can I do to make my bonus action a little bit more useful? What I can do is actually jump back to Artificer and grab Artificer 3. I think I've got a really good foundation now with the fighter, and so I'm okay with jumping back here at level 10 in order to kind of shore all of that up. So with that, we get to choose a subclass here, and there's really only one that works. Now, you could go Battlesmith here and use Intelligence for all of your attacks. That's fine. We would have had to completely respec everything. To me, it's not really worth it, at least in my opinion. We also have the Armorer. Doesn't really help us out a whole lot. The Alchemist just straight up sucks. And so we got one more option. And really, this option is quite good. We're going to go with the Artillerist. Now, the Artillerist is my wife's favorite subclass of Artificer. She just got done playing an Artificer Artillerist in our Curse of Strahd campaign, and she absolutely loved it. So it's a really fun subclass. But just in these 3 levels, we get a decent amount of things. We get our tool proficiency, which now gives us Woodcarver's tools proficiency, which is pretty cool because you would think you would also need that if you're crafting a gun. You know, you imagine that the gun isn't completely metal, that there's some wood on it, so now you have that proficiency. You also get Artillerist spells, which gives us access to shield, which is amazing. We talked about how the Eldritch Knight just felt like a fighter with shield. Well, here's another fighter with shield, and that feels really, really good. And we also, of course, get our Eldritch Cannon. This is the main reason that I'm here. As a bonus action, you can use this cannon that you have created, and you, of course, get 1 for free per day. And if you want to create another one, you can use a spell slot, but you can create this little cannon. You can either have it on your wrist, or it can walk around and climb walls and all kinds of stuff. It's got a decent armor class, and it hits for 2d8 damage on your bonus action. That's not bad. And so you've got three different options here. You've got a flamethrower, which is a cone. You've got a force ballista, which is a single target, but up to 120 feet and deals force damage. And you've also got a temporary hit points little burst cannon of like a 10-foot radius. That's pretty cool, actually. And I like all three of them, to be honest. Most of the time, I imagine we would be using the Force Ballista and probably have it walking around on its own. If you wanted it on your wrist, you could, but either way, that's only going to up our damage, and it's force damage. Hardly anything is going to be resistant to that, and you've got magical piercing damage, so I mean, you're dealing a good amount of damage each turn. Hopefully you've gotten a hold of a bad news by this point, so you're just kind of pumping out all kinds of damage in one turn. Of course, it would have repeating shots, so you're just firing up a bunch of 2d12 worth of bullets. You've got archery adding on to your bonus to hit. You've got sharpshooter adding on to your damage. Yeah, you're dealing a ton of damage, which is amazing. And of course, if you land a violent shot, yeah, it's over. It's over. It's super cool. So now that we've secured that, we jump back to fighter, and we're going to be here for a little bit longer. We are of course getting another ASI or feat at fighter 8. I'm just going to go ahead and bump our wisdom. This is going to do two things for us. We are needing more grit points, and our grit is based on our wisdom. Now, if you could convince your DM that your grit could be based on intelligence, that's up to your DM, and in which case you would bump intelligence here, and we would have spec'd out our stats differently and all that good stuff. I'm assuming as written, so that's why I'm doing it this way. But so we're going to go ahead and bump that. It's going to give us another grit point, and it's also going to prep us for something we're going to be doing here in just a little bit as well. So just be prepared. We're going to be using this for more than one thing. We also get Indomitable at fighter 9, so we get to reroll a save. Again, not bad at all. At fighter 10, we get rapid repair, but we don't care, because if we fail that check on the bonus action, we can always just use an action to mending, and so that's fine. It is nice to possibly be able to fix the jam on a bonus action, especially if you went for violent shot, and then you've got your extra attack to fire again, so at least you're doing some damage. But it's really not as useful because we have mending and because of how this all works. And of course, we also get another shot here, and so I would take either disarming or winging shot, whichever one you didn't get before. At fighter 11, we get our second round of extra attack, and that feels really good. Again, we're not having to use an attack or action in order to reload, so we're just firing off a ton of shots here. 3 shots plus our cannon if we don't use action surge, 6 plus cannon if we do. That's a lot of damage. And on something with a lower AC, yeah, you pumping all kinds of stuff into that is going to be absolutely insane. And I love that. Now, I want to go through something really quickly here. As far as this series goes, I've established for a long time on this series that I have to take at least 11 levels in a class for this series to be satisfied, right? I can't take any less than 11 levels. It has to be mostly levels in the class that I'm featuring. The problem is, besides level 12, which is an ASI, of course, besides that, I don't really get anything of significant value from this subclass anymore. And really, outside of maybe another round of Indomitable, I don't get a whole lot from the base class either. So to me, it's way better to now multi-class again and not take any more fighter levels unless I was taking the one more ASI. But to me, I feel like I can justify not taking the ASI here and just multi-classing the rest of the way. If you want to go the rest of the way in fighter, more power to you. But to me, it's way stronger and prevents me from just plateauing if I go with some other options, especially if you're playing to level 20 or it's a level 21 shot. I know that's rare, but this is what I would do if you're playing past this point. I would go with Ranger. Now, Ranger, of course, is an interesting option. It's not everyone's favorite class, but it does give us some really cool versatility, and it helps us to round ourselves out a little bit. We're only focused on combat right now. This gives us some new purpose. And so I think this is really cool. Maybe we've had an existential crisis. Maybe we've had a run-in with some kind of forest fae creature, and we feel led to study what it is that is natural in the world. And you know, you can flavor that however you want. And to me, I think that we're going to get a lot of mechanical advantages out of it too, as well as telling a compelling story. At Ranger 1, we are of course going to get Canny, and this gives us expertise in one skill of our choice, which is pretty cool. I normally take Stealth, but it is totally up to you. We also get Favored Foe, which I probably am never going to use because it sucks. It uses our concentration, and I don't want to do that on something that's only a D4, and it's just a clunky feature. I think it's not that great. At Ranger 2, though, we do get another fighting style. I would take either defense or blind fighting. Defense, of course, would raise our AC another 1 on top of your Artificer Infusion, on top of your high defense. You're going to be having a really good AC on this character, which is really cool. Blind fighting, of course, would give you a 10-foot range of being able to see pretty much anything, and so that's also really good if you close the distance. Most of the time you probably aren't going to want to be closing the distance, but this does give you a little bit more flexibility, something I would consider. We also get spellcasting, which we of course just increased our wisdom a few levels ago, so our spell saving DC and our bonus to hit are not bad. So we can actually take some better spells on this one. Number 1, we're taking Hunter's Mark. This is a much better use of our bonus action early on, and so we can go ahead and cast that and then pump a bunch of attacks into this. That feels really good, and I really love the ability to just deal a bunch of extra damage with all of these attacks that we're making. And then of course you can action surge, and of course you can also blow Astral Spark in there as well. You can really rack up some damage with Hunter's Mark on there. Some other ones I would take are Entangle, not a bad spell at all, and Goodberry, of course, is a nice little heal. You have to talk to your DM as far as whether or not you can force a Goodberry down somebody's throat when they're unconscious. It's an interesting one. I haven't had that come up in my campaign. I'm not sure how I would roll that. As far as our 3rd level of Ranger, though, we're going to get our subclass, and you all already know where we're going with this. We're going Gloomstalker. Gloomstalker gives us so many awesome features just at this 3rd level. We get Gloomstalker magic, which is fine. We get 1 spell. Who cares? Dread Ambusher, though, is really cool. So not only can we make an extra attack on our first turn, we also get another bonus to our initiative. So we got a bonus to our initiative back at Quick Draw. I didn't mention it there, but I was going to talk about it here. We get to add our proficiency bonus plus our wisdom modifier plus our dex modifier, because that's how it works normally. So we're adding 6 plus 5 plus 4. You have a plus 15 to initiative. That's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. And it feels really good to be able to roll a possible 35 on initiative. That's just fantastic, and I absolutely love that. We of course also get Umbral Sight, which is good. Better late than never to get something like this, but it's cool. I like it. Now at this next level, though, of course we have another ASIR feat. We could of course take maybe the Piercer feat. We could take like Skulker or something weird like that. No, we're gonna multiclass again. It's just better for me to multiclass one more time. We've got 3 more levels to go, and I think I can get every single thing that I want out of this build in 3 more levels. We're going to take rogue levels now for our last 3 levels. We of course get expertise, so now we have a total of 3 stats with expertise in it, which is really cool. We of course get sneak attack of 1d6. It's not a huge amount of damage, so don't expect this to be massive, but we are still scaling our damage, and that's the biggest thing, is that I don't want us to just fall off and not be able to deal any more damage as we level up, and that can be a problem with builds like this. We also get Thieves' Cant, and so this allows you to speak to other thieves in like sign language, in coded wording, all kinds of fun stuff. I think Thieves' Cant is really flavorful. We had Thieves' Cant in my Curse of Strahd campaign. We had like secret handshakes that we would actually get up and do that had to deal with different situations, and that was really fun. I thought that was really cool. Then at Rogue 2, we of course get Cutting Action, and so now we get a ton of stuff to do on our bonus action at level 19. So of course Dash, Disengage, and Hide, we can now do those as a bonus action, which feels really good for helping us to get where we need to go on the battlefield and get out of melee if something is up in our face and we do not want to be there. This allows you to get out of there. Finally, then at level 20, we get to choose our subclass, and This is a subclass that I do not normally recommend. In fact, I normally say that it's really bad. But when you've got a plus 15 to initiative, I can't say anything bad for it. We're going with the Assassin Rogue. And so the Assassin Rogue, of course, gives us bonus proficiencies. It's fine, whatever. But we get Assassinate. And so this allows you to possibly get auto crits. And my goodness, the amount of damage that we can deal with an auto crit, because the amount of damage that we are already doing, plus on top of re-rolling all of our dice. I mean, if we're using bad news, just our gun is dealing 4d12 damage, plus whatever else we add on there, and that's just one attack. We're making 3, possibly 6, plus a cannon. Yeah, that's kind of insane, and I absolutely love that. Now, how often are you going to get surprised? Hardly ever, but you do get advantage when you go first, or at least before your enemies, and you're going to be doing that quite often. And so that's where this really comes in. That's where you get so much value out of this. This is where you blow Violent Shot. You blow every grit you have into Violent Shot if you feel that that's necessary. I would do it. And of course, you also get Steady Aim if you want to give yourself free advantage. Just, of course, you can't move on that turn, but it's kind of worth it to me. It does take up your bonus action, but honestly, I think it would be really cool to think that you can go with Deadeye Shot on the first attack, then use your bonus action in order to Steady Aim, and then you get advantage on 2 attacks, which is pretty cool. And of course, Steady Aim would not conflict with Violent Shot, and so you could get advantage for free if you are on subsequent turns after that. Of course, if you have any grit left. If you blew all of it at once, then you know it is what it is. But if you have grit left in order to blow that, then that's also a cool option that you can use. So that is our build for today. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. This is a build that I've wanted to bring you all for so long, and man, I hate that it had to be put off, but I think it's cool to have this as a Christmas upload. I'm really happy about that. Let's go ahead and look at our honorable mentions really quickly before we go. As far as other races go, I've got 2 options. Of course, custom lineage with the gunner feat. This is one of the best options for this, but of course we get part of this from the race that we chose, but we also miss out on a few things from gunner, namely we can shoot within 5 feet and it not cause disadvantage. It is rough to miss out on that, and so that if you would prefer to have that over this, then I totally understand. But I think it's nice being able to shoot the long range right off the bat a little bit more, and so that allows you to keep your distance much farther, and that way you don't have to worry about being in melee nearly as often. So I think you get a lot more out of the race that we chose than this one, but it is a absolutely fair option if you don't allow this race. And of course, the Kobold. The Kobold, you get within 10 feet. Of course, in this case, I would take blind fighting, and you get within 10 feet and you cry as your bonus action, and then you pump all of these attacks at advantage, blowing Violent Shot, blowing all the things at once, and dealing so much damage. It's absolutely insane. Yeah, I think that would be really cool, and I think a crazy Kobold with a gun is just so funny. I think that would be a really fun character to play. As far as other subclasses and classes go, of course, we talked about the Artificer a little bit. There were, of course, 2 other options that were okay, but ultimately I think the one we chose was the best one. You also could have gone with the Phantom Rogue. This would of course allow you to deal a little bit of quote-unquote splash damage on your sneak attack, but ultimately waiting until level 20 in order to get that is a little rough, and it wouldn't give you nearly as much value as the Assassin would. It's just an option if you like that for flavor, but yeah, the one we chose is much better mechanically. And then finally, for other things that we could have taken as far as feats, Gunner, of course, we talked about that one already. Piercer, of course, we didn't take the Piercer feat, which would have been really nice for our crits, but we of course didn't really have room for it. This build really doesn't rely on a lot of feats, which is really good. A lot of fighters do rely on a lot of feats, but this one really gets everything it needs from the 2 levels of Artificer, and then everything else we get is really kind of gravy. So I think that's really cool to not have to rely on something like that. So that's our video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Of course, let me know what you think down below. Next week, of course, we are moving on to yet another fighter subclass, which is going to be a ton of fun. Hopefully everything will be on schedule next week. We'll find out. But until then, stay safe out there, stay healthy, have a Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.